Good morning, good morning. I have a question for you. When was the last time you were triggered? Do you even know what a trigger feels like? I'm sure you do. But let's put some like identity to it, right? Like, what does it actually feel like? So somebody says something, somebody does something, you smell something, you hear something, you see something, and this feeling just rises up within you. That that is a trigger, my friend. So, something that I see a lot online when it comes to these triggers, because everybody's starting to know and realize, oh, it's a trigger thing, right? And because everybody's trying to heal themselves today and whatnot, and awesome, awesome. I'm doing the same thing, right? Like because we all want to be better and feel better. um, so with this trigger thing online, what I see a lot of is finger pointing, like, that person's a trigger. Or, I don't want to do that. It's a trigger. It's a trigger. It either becomes like an excuse, like, I can't do it because that triggers me, or it's like the blame game, right? And my question is, well, what are you doing to heal the trigger? What are you doing to heal it? I know me personally, I started doing this thing where uh, anytime, it could be anytime, any place, anywhere, in a conversation, whatever. If I start to feel that emotion rise, an emotion rise, I jot it down. I jot it down. I jot down what it is that I was just triggered about, Like, for example, the other day my kid and I were on the phone, and not that my kid was triggering me. There was a conversation that we were having, and within that conversation there was a trigger that rose up. And it was, for me, it was, so I jotted it down and I visit it later during like journaling time. And then I write it out then, right? Like I just did one this morning. And it's interesting to see where it goes back to, because that's how you heal the trigger, you guys, is you have to you have to go back and figure out the first time you ever felt that way. Like, what was it that caused it? What, you have to peel the onion on the actual trigger. So this conversation that my kid and I were having, like he's going to be 20 soon. So he's, venturing off. He's not in my nest anymore, right? So it's he's on his own, and he's discovering new things, and he thinks this could be wrong with him, or this could be whatever, right? And my initial reaction is, there's nothing wrong with you. You're it's all in your head, right? Like you're just like, that's the thought, right? But there's this feeling, it's that feeling that comes up. So whenever somebody says, like, oh, well, this is what's wrong with me, and then I'm just like, it's not that bad, or anything along those lines, right? And that's not cool of me. That's not cool of me at all, because I mean, the way these people are feeling is totally valid. And what the challenge is, after I dissected it in my journals, I was realizing how, as a child, I was brought up to, look at this, there's some emotion coming up. Um, I was raised to walk it off, right? Like, I remember so clearly. I was an older child by this time. I was eighth grade, and an older child. I was in eighth grade, and my mom, I used to complain to her, and I wanted to go to the doctor because my hips were numb. Like every time I'd wake up in the morning, my hips would be numb, and I didn't like it. And I wanted to go to the doctor and find out what it was, right? And she would just brush it off. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's all in your head. It's, like, stop making up stuff. It's not as bad as you think it is. Like, all of everything that just stemmed up from that little trigger that came up in that conversation, right? And then I remember her, like, it was in eighth grade, because I was complaining about it again, and she flipped, right? She just flipped out on me, and she's like, fine, then go to the effing doctor, And I'm just like, I'm in eighth grade, I don't know how to go to the doctor. You know, actually, I didn't laugh, but you know, like, how is a child supposed to do that on their own, right? But in either case, it was the fact that I wasn't believed. It was the fact that it was dismissed. It was the fact that, you know, nobody really cared, you know? Like it's all in my head. It's all in my head, which has stemmed and carried on throughout my entire life, right? Like when I was going through the MS stuff, all that testing, 6 months worth of testing, right? And all these tests kept coming back fine, except for the one which was um what was it? The tick, Lyme's disease. I had a false positive for Lyme's disease. I was pretty about that because I would have been okay with Lyme disease versus MS because if it was caught early enough, you can reverse those side effects, right? So anyway, my whole thought, and I literally started calling myself a scientific mystery because, you know, nobody could figure out what was wrong, which made me start to feel like it was in my head, made me feel a little bit crazy. And, you know, that wasn't my fault. There was something wrong. I mean, I had MS, right? I had glaucoma. I had a whole bunch of stuff wrong. And then in Ayurveda, I learned a heck of a lot more that was wrong, right? And there was stuff that was wrong. It was not in my head. It was not. I'm just saying, Mom. So, my whole point of all of this is like your triggers. Triggers. Find out where they're coming from. Don't just identify it. Don't just identify, oh, you know, that's a trigger. Like, get to the root cause of that trigger so you can heal it so you don't have to be triggered anymore, right? Like, the more you start to become aware of these things, the less it impacts you. A little bit more every single time. So there's progress, right? It's not like a poof, it goes away or anything like that. It's a progress. It's a progression. It will, every time you realize it, it will be a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit less each time. So I encourage you, try, you know, just do what I'm doing, you know. I don't know if you want to do what I'm doing, but whenever I have that feeling pop up, whatever it is, I just jot it down. Any piece of paper that's lying around, I try to get it into the journal, but it doesn't always get there. Usually it does, but whatever. And so that way I can revisit it later. And it's been really life-changing. I can't say life-changing yet. I mean, I can, I just did. But I would say it's just been very eye-opening, right? Very, very eye-opening. Like, oh, that's where it came from. Ah, I can see how you felt that way. Ah, I can see why you've done all those things in your life that you've done that stemmed from that, right? It's just a big aha. And then each time it comes about, you'll realize that because you can't unknown. You can't unknow what you know. Say that 10 times fast. I'm just saying. So it just gets a little bit better and a little bit better every single time. So I hope you find this useful. I hope you've been encouraged to, you know, work on those triggers. And see, that's also a trigger for me is that feeling of, you know, people pointing the finger like, oh, it's a trigger. And they do it with narcissism too. They do it with all kinds of things. And the whole, I had to think about this, right? It's the whole pointing of the finger, like pointing the blame. So I had to, that was one of the things I had jotted down. And I went back and it's all in the childhood, you guys. It's all in the childhood. I'm still working on that one, like peeling the onion on that one, because I can't tell if it was my parents, my brother, you know, but I'm pretty sure it stemmed from my brother and anchored into the parents. But Yeah, peeling. Peel away. Just peel away. Ask questions. Ask the why question. Like, why do you feel that way? Why? What happened? Ugh, I could go on. Okay. All right. Triggers. Work on them. Don't just accuse people of being a trigger. All right.